Hi, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm going to share with you today something fairly special, and this will unfold as we go. It's about an Australian photographer who was amazing, lived back some years ago now, and I'm going to tell you all about it in a minute. I've written about this man on my blog before, and I'm going to be reading from my blog post about him and his photography and other things that he did, and also I'm going to share a PowerPoint presentation of some of his photographs. He's probably, when you think of this treasure trove of photography that he's got, it's a little bit like how they found the lady, what was her name, Vivian Mayer, all her photos, and then everyone raved about them. Well, this man's photos were obviously known to all the people at the time that he was taking them, but because it was such a long time ago, he's probably largely forgotten by many, except for a couple of members of his immediate family. So I'm going to share this with you, and hopefully it'll whet your appetite as we go. I'm going to talk about it as we go. So I'm going to swap over now and start reading. I'm just going to shift this out the road, and I'm going to start reading from my blog. And I'm going to give you a link to this blog afterwards. So this is about Mr. C Brooker. But you've never heard of him. Some people would have. But he was a pastor. He was a mentor to many people. He was a businessman, a family man, a sports administrator, I think probably a sports coach, a photographer, and much more. And it's amazing. I'm just reading off of my blog post here, and you'll be able to see this afterwards if you want to. It's amazing how one can stumble across a treasure trove quite innocuously. I was invited to lunch one Sunday, and my hostess showed me a small card, a bit like the old cigarette cards we used to get, commemorating the fact that the Queenstown Church of Christ football team, which is located down near Port Adelaide in South Australia, won their premiership in 1946. It had an action pic on the front of a footballer. And this photo, in fact, all of these photos you'll find in the State Library of South Australia. Anyway, Valmay told me a little bit about the footy club's background, and this prompted me to do an internet search. Well, it didn't take long to hit gold. Enter a vast collection of photography and some home movies, all produced before 1946 by one C Brooker. And as I said before, he was a pastor, businessman, evangelist, sports enthusiast, and much more. This collection I found on the website of the State Library of South Australia. The file numbers from the collection are noted with each picture, and the State Library, when I spoke to them a couple of years ago, said that you can use these with permission, provided those file numbers are on the photos. So you'll see the file numbers at the bottom of all these photos I'm going to show you. For any similar use, one should contact the State Library. Below is the link to the online collection. So I'm going to have a link for this online collection for you. What else can I tell you? I've got a couple of photos on my blog that you'll see in a minute as well. Here's an article from a little bit about his life when he died in 1947. This was the death of Pastor Brooker, 25/3/47. This is from an article in the paper, probably the Trove collection of newspaper articles. Church of Christ cleric for 42 years, Pastor C Brooker, who died yesterday at the age of 72, was preacher at the Church of Christ Queenstown for 42 years. While still in the furniture business in Rundle Street, City, Pastor Brooker preached at the church for 10 years. He gave up his business 32 years ago, this is back then, to become a full-time preacher. He made the decision to become a cleric or a minister after his 7-year-old son had recovered from serious injuries received in an accident. I think he made a promise to God, if you save my son's life, I'm going to dedicate my life to you and to being a minister and everything else under the sun. Now, he was born at Hindmarsh and had lived at Alberton, that's another suburb of South Australia, down near Port Adelaide, for 32 years. He preached his first sermon at the age of 18 and delivered more than 10,000 addresses during his life. He was federal president of the Churches of Christ of Australia from 1916 until 1920 and was state president in 1910. These are all interesting things for people who have been involved in Churches of Christ like I have. He was on the State Home Mission Committee for 30 years, and at the time of his death was a member of the advisory board and a seal holder. Other official positions held by Pastor Brooker were chairman of the Port Adelaide Seamen's Mission for 17 years, president of the South Australian Alliance for 5 years, and a member and past chief ruler of the Independent Order of Rechabites, or Rechabites. As a young man, he studied medicine for 4 years. He lives a widow and 3 children, Mr. William Brooker and Mesdames J. Hall and D. Broadbent. I came across some of William Brooker's photography last year in the Churches of Christ Jubilee pictorial publication. I was visiting my sister-in-law and her husband in Canberra, and Rob's dad was a Church of Christ minister, and he had this book, which you can still buy, but quite expensive, which is a pictorial history of the Churches of Christ. And I came across some of the photography. I looked at that photography in that book, and I'll probably put a link on it so you can look at it online. But some of the photography, when I looked at it, they didn't say who the photographer was, and it was stuff from all around Australia, photos from all around Australia. But when I looked at it, I thought, gee, this guy knew what he was doing. Whoever the photographer was, I presumed it was a guy. Could have been a lady, but I presumed it was a guy at the time when I was right. And so when I found his online collection, I recognised some of the shots that were in that book. And at the time, as I said, when I saw the book, I thought how well the photographs have been taken, obviously done by someone with a lot of photographic skill and knowledge. I intend to do some more research on this man and his work and do some more posts featuring his work. So I guess that's what I'm doing now. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get into a PowerPoint that I've produced. So I'm just going to go away for a little while. Now, you should be seeing, because I'm up in the right-hand corner, the photography and legacy of C Brooker. So let's get started. There's quite a few photos here that I've downloaded off of the State Library website. That's the man himself. I presume he organised that self-portrait. There's quite a few photos of him here. That's him in his darkroom many years ago. This whole collection was actually found because someone had dumped them all in a bin or something on the footpath, and someone went past and found them, a bit like the Vivian Mayer story, and decided these are too incredible, they should go somewhere, so they took them to the State Library. So that was him in his darkroom. He used to have a furniture business, and that's obviously taken in his furniture showroom. If you go to the website, I haven't got any, the State Library website, you'll find photos of some of his business and employees and some of the furniture they made back then. That's the book I was telling you about, The Jubilee History of Churches of Christ, edited by A.B. Maston. But as I said, it didn't say who the photographer was. I won't. You'll see a couple of photos that were in that book in a minute. So he was very much an evangelist. That's a mission, and you'll see a lot of these Christian-based, church-based photos. But there's a vast variety. It's a microcosm or chasm of life in the times when he was living, up until when he died in 47, from about the 1920s up until about 1947. And of course, Churches of Christ have adult baptism by immersion. So that's in one of the churches back then. And there is a photograph, excuse me, taken out the front of one of the Churches of Christ, and that's C Brooker standing up there just to the right of the entrance there, our right, and he's on the left if he was looking out towards us. So that's him standing up there with the black robe on and the white shirt showing through. And I'm amazed at that group photo. I mean, that would have been, he must have had someone up high taking that photograph, and I don't think he would have done it with a piece of string. But anyway, it's an amazing shot. And that's him in the back there with the glasses on. There's lots of portraits, and he processed all of these. Some of them were on glass plates. Some of them were taken on the old folding medium format type cameras. That's the mission to seamen that he was involved in down at Port Adelaide or somewhere, I think. I don't know whether that building's still there or not. This was on, could have been the Adelaide railway station. There was a visiting American evangelist coming, and that was some photos taken then. And this was when the same guy, I think, and If you look in the middle of the photograph, there looks like there's someone there taking a photo, but it wouldn't have been C Brooker. He must have been taking the photo from the angle we're looking at. That's him studying something through the microscope. He was a jack of all trades and master of all of them, I think. And there's some people on a ship, and not him, but notice the camera that someone's holding there. A lot of these photos would have been taken on a camera like that. I have one similar to that. And another similar shot, I think that's C Brooker on the left when he was a bit younger, and that's probably showing off one of his new cameras to these guys here. Now that's taken down at Largs Bay in South Australia. That building is still there, I believe, but that was obviously probably a Sunday outing or something for these ladies sitting in the seaweed. That's him again. I think I showed you that shot in his furniture factory. This is obviously taken on the veranda of someone's house. I think that's him on the left there with the glasses on, and some of the family. And this one, I think he did a lot of stereo photos as well. I think this is from a stereo couple of shots up in the Adelaide Hills, probably near Brownhill Creek, I think it is, or Waterfall Gully. There's a nice portrait of a lady reading with her son there, I presume. Another portrait, that's C Brooker on the right with his glasses on. He had backdrops, he did weddings. I don't know whether he ever charged people for his photography, because he was obviously earning a living earlier in his business with his furniture, and then he was obviously paid as a pastor for many years. In fact, he actually married my late auntie and uncle, my wife's late auntie and uncle, back years ago at his residence, which you might see here somewhere. That's obviously down at Largs Bay again, and I love that shot. Those kids are looking up over the seaweed at someone there stretched out on the grass, and he probably doesn't know that they're there. I love that candid sort of shot. This is shot by the picket fence, or by the picket gate fence anyway. Little girl and her pets. And there's WC with probably one of his children in his backyard, I think. Now, there's a lot of shots on the collection that taken at the Alberton Oval. They used to have Sunday school picnics there, I think, and those kids are doing something. They're probably trying to catch hold of those, whatever they are, marshmallows or whatever, with their hands behind their back, and it's some sort of a game. They played all sorts of games. Another portrait, I'm not sure who that distinguished gentleman is. And that's another lovely portrait of this lady. That was in the book that I was telling you about. That's one of the gospel missions. He did a lot of what they call tent missions. I've done a video on tent missions, and his name is mentioned in that, where I did an interview with one of our pastors about the tent missions. And this is one of the original cards that I saw that alerted me to this man when I did the research after I found this card that my friend Valmay had. There's a football match. And I think he was a coach and patron of the football team that was at the Queenstown Church. There's at season 1921. And I would guess he probably took that photo. There's another more informal shot of the footy team. People playing tennis. I love that shot. I love the pose of that guy, the way he's standing there. Not quite like Wimbledon, but anyway. And that's C Brooker on the left, and I'm presuming maybe a relative or a brother or someone. And there is part of the Sunday school picnic happening down there at Alberton. Well, you can see that I've changed my clothes since I started this video. I had a few interruptions, a little bit of difficulty with remembering how to use my technology properly. So I'm just going to get back in now and share the screen with you with some more shots, and towards the end of this PowerPoint presentation I've got on C Brooker, so we'll see how we go. Let me just get out of there. We're just going to share the screen. Okay, so there we are. There's some guys getting ready to play cricket down the beach. I think that's probably down near Port Elliot back in the day, the sort of bathing costumes that people wore back in the day, a bit more modest than they are these days. And this is a couple of stereo shots taken with a stereo camera for stereo viewing. That black dog's in a lot of the photos. There must have been the family dog, I think, in C Brooker's family. And that's an interesting scene. Another shot of the lady playing tennis with a beautiful backhand. These guys are playing Diabolo. You better look that up and see what they're doing. It's still around in the world today, but it was very popular back in that era. And there's WC dressed up as a Rechabite, I think, out the front of his house. And I'm not sure what's going on there. Obviously, it's some important national gathering of some sort with flags flying. I'm not sure what's going on. A lot of people used to travel around in those old wagons there, as you can see there, to events. I love this photo. These are, looks like it's a family picnic or a picnic outing. And notice the guys with about 4 shotguns in the photo there. So I don't know whether they're out there to try and catch their supper. Now, this is the Grote Street Church of Christ offices. So this was in that book that I was telling you about before. And back in the 1990s, I was actually the chairman of that board. But that was a few years after this one was presented. Some well-known Church of Christ names in there, Matthews and Verco and Caldecott and Manning. Verco, yep. Pollard, I think. And this was the Dorcas ladies at the Grote Street Church. Even when I was at the church, they used to have a Dorcas group, which is based on a lady in the Bible called Dorcas, who had a ministry of helps, I suppose, or sewing and mending things and fixing things, just a general good person who helped everyone with practical things around the household. So they continued that for many years when I was involved in Churches of Christ. There's some other well-known names there, I think, too, amongst the Churches of Christ history books. This is the Seamen's Mission, and I think we saw a picture of that earlier, which W.C. Brooker was involved in. That's the Queenstown Footy Club. That says 1922, that one does there. And these lovely ladies, he was a brilliant photographer as far as group shots were concerned, in my opinion. He just knew how to get them right. That's a lovely photo of some nurses, I think, of some sort. I'm not sure whether that was in the Seamen's Mission or what, don't know. Ladies Merchant Service Leave, it could have been them at Port Adelaide. There you go. Lovely portrait of a little girl, possibly WC's William Brooker's daughter. Another nice pose shot with a piano there. He did a lot of this sort of thing. If you go through his whole collection, there's quite a few shots where he's actually put up backdrops and obviously set up lighting and all sorts of things. Bit of colour tinting there with an old boat. My dad used to do a bit of that with black and white shots, used to colour tint them. Now, this is an interesting shot. This is probably down near Port Elliot or somewhere where people are throwing out a net. A net in the water there, and they're netting for fish. And all the people on the a dragnet, they call them, I think, all the people on the beach were obviously waiting as that gets pulled in closer to the shore. All the fish suddenly are pulled up onto the shore, and you get a really interesting catch sometimes if everything's going right. Some boys at the Sunday school picnic again. I think they're playing marbles there. That's again at Alberton Oval, I think, which is the home of the Port Adelaide Magpies originally. It's a lovely new house that's just been built by the looks of things. Very common. There's a lot of those houses still around Adelaide, and just where we were last night down at Mile End, there's a lot of those houses in the back streets down there, and also down Port Adelaide and Alberton. An old car that must have belonged to the family. It's a beauty, that one. W.C. Brooker lived close to Port Adelaide, so there's lots in his collection. There's lots of ships taken down at the Port Adelaide and Outer Harbour. There's a stereo shot taken down there. Look at that, with the old sailing ships with the masts on the sailing ships there. Interesting composition. Horses feature a lot in his photography. Excuse me. That's a beautiful shot. Little dog in the background. This is some sort of a event at the Sunday school picnic, I think. Notice the man looking down on them and holding a bell upside down. He must be about to ring the bell to say, okay, that's enough, whoever's in front or whatever wins. And this is getting ready to go off to the cricket again by the looks of things. There are lots of movies on the website, not a lot, but in the collection at the library, there are some movies featuring people going onto the back of a truck, I think, and heading off to cricket. This is down at the Riverton Railway Station. I've actually been there a few years ago to photograph a wedding, and it's now a private residence now, I think. It was an art gallery when I did the wedding there, and they had the reception in the rooms there. And that, I think, is probably at the Riverton Railway Station, because I think that signal box was there as well at the time. He obviously took a few photos on the River Murray. This is in the heyday with the paddle steamers, and that's an interesting shot. I love that, the composition and everything. Look at that, the cameras they were using, and to get that action shot jumping over a hurdle, that's pretty amazing, really. Not sure where that would have been taken. And this is in the Adelaide Hills somewhere, not sure where. That's a classic shot. That bridge probably doesn't exist anymore. Another lady with a horse up on the top of a hill somewhere. Two guys tossing the coin to see which end they're going to kick in the game of footy. So there you are. That was a look at the work of C Brooker, an amazing man, preacher, evangelist, photographer, businessman, sports coach, mentor to many. And have a look at his work in the State Library. I'll try and put a link underneath, and also a link to the book that I think I talked about. Forgotten what I said at the start of this video now, of the pictorial history of Churches of Christ in Australia, which he contributed many of the photos to. You should be able to, I'll hopefully find a link for you so you can actually look at that online. So thanks for watching. Like if you like, subscribe if you wish, and I'll see you next time.